Imagine this. You are walking down the street and all of a sudden a deranged homeless man drops on all fours and starts screaming to the top of his lungs for you to direct him to the nearest fentanyl reactor. And if you can't give him his drugs in time, well, he explodes. No, I'm not talking about Los Angeles, but you were extremely close, my friend. Today, we will be playing Rimworld with the World of Addicts mod. This mod will turn even your grandmother into Fetty Wap's trap queen.
You need more.
I need more.
Oh, you need more.
On top of giving every playable character a guaranteed crack addiction, all non-playable characters have a 30% chance to be some type of drug addict. But that wasn't enough for this challenge. So I went into the settings and made sure not only will our playable characters have a crack addiction, but they will also have every other addiction in the game as well. If that wasn't enough, if they die from withdrawals, illness, or even drug overdose, they'll explode. So our challenge today will be pretty simple, starting with 50 colonists with every addiction possible in the game, and 4 doctors who will be their caretakers. Can I cure their drug addiction before they die a horrible, violent death of fentanyl overdose while exploding into a ball of fire? Let's begin. As my colonists crash landed, we were soon introduced to the area that we'd be calling home. Within seconds of landing, almost everyone began vomiting on the floor. I guess mixing every drug known to man into a purple cup and drinking it before being hurtled into space wasn't a great idea. Although these drug addicts do look cute and harmless, don't fall for their cuteness. Within a matter of days, they will soon turn into self-detonating freaks the second their withdrawals kick in. So we'll have to take advantage of their usefulness while their addiction meter is full. So I began constructing sleeping arrangements that were exactly 2 units apart on all sides. This was to minimize a domino effect if one of my colonists were to explode. I then split the room into 4 different sections, and then preemptively created hospital beds for those who would become coma patients due to withdrawal symptoms. If you follow me over here, this is what I like to call El Chapo's vault. Here contains the drugs that our colonists will need in order to survive a few days without instantly combusting. And here is where our colonists will eat and consume every drug known to man. For the first 2 days, our colony did surprisingly well. Outside of your usual pyromaniac setting things on fire, and of course one of our drug addicts trying to beat the living shit out of one of the doctors, things weren't too bad. I was even able to set up a research area where several of our colonists worked towards the research of addictol, the serum that we'd be using to cure our fent-induced colonists. However, things started to go a bit south when I remembered that I completely forgot to pack ambrosia in El Chapo's vault, and soon our colonists began going through ambrosia withdrawals. The symptoms of this withdrawal was nothing like crack cocaine or the other hard drugs. You simply suffered a mood debuff that just kind of made you mad at everything. With one drug completely missing, our fent lords looked heavily towards new ways to make them happy. Although our drug addicts were definitely professionals, they had no clue what the perfect combination of drugs was. Do you mix wake up and flake, or do you smoke joints and then drink enough beer to the point where you throw up to get the best high? It wasn't till the pioneer Hopkins discovered the best possible drug combination in the game. Go juice mixed with wake up and a splash of alcohol just to get you a little tipsy. This concoction got you so high, it made you feel like you could race God from the gates of heaven back to earth before you could even see the light. And it wasn't long before Hopkins' discovery soon made its way to every member of my colony. And soon, all my members were working day and night twice as fast as the average human. For a minute, it seemed like the very thing that I was trying to cure was carrying my colony on its back. As my performance-enhanced druggies zoomed through their task, we quickly researched high-tech research benches. With the right amount of power supplied to them, this would allow us to soon research drug production and addictol, our cure for drug addiction. But soon, our drug addicts wanted more and more. Our pioneer Hopkins found out that if you mix in smoke leaf to the concoction that nearly sent you to God, you would be able to get so high that you could no longer walk. After several colonists followed her lead, many of the colonists ended up getting bedridden from being way too high. And this is kind of a bit of a paradox, but we had to force feed them drugs to stop their withdrawals from other drugs. And of course, this led to some unintended overdoses. It wasn't until Bean took so many drugs that he exploded that I finally decided to temporarily restrict access to wake up for a second. In the meantime, I instructed my colonists to research drug production, the final requirement for our cure to addiction. Wait, you guys already finished? What the hell? How did you finish so fast? Oh, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Now, it was finally time to begin our research towards the cure. However, I did not consider how hard it would be to feed a colony that is literally 30% more hungry than the average colony. Because in this colony, quite literally everyone and their mother is a stoner. So I sent some of my doctors out in a caravan, not only to acquire Nutramine, an essential ingredient we needed to make addictol, but also to trade drugs to our local fiends in exchange for food. At this point, several of my colonists started going through wake-up withdrawals due to the restrictions that I placed earlier. This resulted in them being 30% less conscious, moving 20% slower, falling asleep 30% quicker, and most importantly, the chances of them getting an erection was now reduced by a whopping 25%. As a drug addict colony, sex plays a very pivotal role in our society, so I decided to risk the chance of them exploding for one last glorious gooning session before they go out with a bang. However, this was probably one of the worst ideas I've ever had, because as my doctors were making their way to the drug lord traders, Laura died from a mix between alcohol and go juice, Lorena got in a fight with Hopkins over who could snort more yayo, Martinez and Amelia died from a competition over who could butt chug the most go juice, almost everyone in my colony decided this was a great time to overdose, and if that wasn't enough, another local drug addict came by to ask if he could borrow a lighter to smoke a joint. But, yeah, I'm sorry, Rocco. These people probably thought you were the man crawling in their walls. So yeah, other than 4 of my colonists dying, okay, let's make that 5. In a current drug epidemic worse than the opioid crisis, everything was just fine and peachy. On the bright side, our doctors finally came back with some ingredients needed to make addictol, and some food for our superhuman army of drug addicts. It looks like they had come back just in time as well, because as our doctors were gone, some colonists took it upon themselves to care and nurse for those who got so high that they couldn't move. Personally, I don't think I'd enjoy biting the head off of one of my friends and eating them as an impromptu dinner. However, under the influence of several mind-altering drug, who knows? I might have mistaken them for a Thanksgiving turkey dinner. In the midst of creating as much drug-curing serum as I could, it started to feel like I was betraying the very people who helped me get this far by taking from the colonists what they love the most, drugs. You see, some people might describe drug addicts as crazy people with unpredictable behaviors who could even snap at any second. And to this, yes, I'd have to agree. But when you look closer at what a drug addict really is, no, even closer, we can see that drug addicts are truly some of the biggest grinders that exist in our society. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a drug addict do nothing? No, they're always doing something. Whether it's stealing a refrigerator out an alleyway and riding away with it on a bicycle, or using their shadow clone jitsu ability to karate chop anyone who's decided to make eye contact with them. At the end of the day, drug addicts are really some of the most powerful people in society. Take Hopkins, for example, the inventor of the drug combination I like to call Heaven's Staircase. When her friend Flex exploded from overdosing, instead of running away and screaming like most people would, she beat out the flames on his body and slept with his corpse. Now, some might say that this was due to her passion and care for others, but I'd personally like to think the fact that she was so high that she probably didn't even know where she was. Huh? Wait, what's that noise? Wait, Wink, where are you? Where's my dog? That's it. These drug addicts need to go now. Using the supplies from our last caravan trip, we were able to create exactly 15 addictol. At this point, we've already lost 6 colonists to drug addiction, but we can now cure 15 of them. This is roughly a third of our colony. However, addictol has some very dangerous side effects that I haven't really been honest about. The first is due to the violent nature of suddenly removing several addictions at once. It is extremely painful to use addictol on our drug addicts, and if we're not careful, using this can lead to instant death. On top of this, if the administering of addictol is successful, the patient will enter a comatose for a minimum of 2 to 3 days. So if we were to use all of our addictol immediately, including those who are already incapacitated from withdrawals, over half our colony would be unusable. This would easily leave us susceptible to raids or starvation from lack of hunter-gatherers. So instead, we'll slowly be administering addictol to the patients in small batches at a time. Since addictol is such a dangerous cure to use, I decided to use it on my most vulnerable colonists, the elderly and the disabled. However, in this playthrough, anyone over the age of 60 would have had a heart attack by now and died from the sheer amount of drugs they consumed. So congratulations! If you are over the age of 30 or have a disability like asthma, I'm going to be using a completely unregulated and unused drug on you. You'll thank me later. Now at this point you might be thinking, Frostburns, you're curing their drug addictions by giving them an even deadlier drug that turns them into a temporary vegetable. And to that, I have to say, yes, random internet person, you are right. But hypothetically, if you had to choose, would you prefer to run into a homeless man on crack, Adderall, acid, PCP, and so many poppers he's begging you to meet him behind the trash can in exchange for a lollipop, or a homeless man in a coma who will spend the next few days projectile vomiting in the streets? Trust me, the lollipop was good, but it wasn't worth it. This time, I'll be choosing option B. As I began injecting my colonists with deadly drugs to cure their addiction, Herbert and Tyler took it upon themselves to feed patients entire cows since we were running so low on food. At first, I figured they were doing this as punishments to people for no longer being full-fledged drug addicts. However, as I checked our supply, it occurred to me that nearly all of our food was diminished, and I think I know what to blame it on. But anyways, it seemed the mass mandate of turning my colony into a hunter-gatherer society simply wasn't enough. I was using our food resources to create a beautiful assortment of meals for everyone in the colony, and this was my downfall. I was treating these drug addicts like human beings who deserve the best possible treatment. But in reality, these people are puppy murdering freaks who decide to mix honey packets with crack, kill their friends, and explode when they don't get enough drugs. So with that being said, from now on, the only meals these addicts will be eating is an amalgamation of meat called nutrient paste, otherwise known as glop. By combining every meat, vegetable, and human corpse known to man, we can create enough food to supply our entire colony for a few days. However, there's just one issue. In order to create a nutrient paste dispenser, I'll need 5 components, and I currently only have 2. Thankfully, there's an ancient danger nearby, and usually these contain extremely valuable resources that can range anywhere from components to drugs that will literally allow you to make direct contact with the devil. However, the enemies in these ancient dangers, well, can be extremely dangerous. But we've been preparing for a moment like this. My craftsman Chiyoko had taken wake-up pills, go juice, and mushrooms to work around the clock to create the most advanced weapons known to man to defeat any enemies that will lie behind these walls. Wait, Chiyoko, I asked you to make weapons of mass destruction. These are just a bunch of bow and arrows. Okay, clearly Chiyoko wasn't in the right mindset when I asked her to create these weapons, but no worries. I injected my drug addicts with as much juice as possible and assembled the most talented group of drug addicts I know. Using their drug-induced states and their bow and arrows, they will easily kill any threat that lies behind these walls.
It was at this moment he knew. He fucked up.
Help! Help! Help me!
This raid was another one of the worst decisions I could have ever made, because shortly after, Daff went into a murderous rage trying to kill Friera, and we then had to beat her into submission. This caused her to violently combust. On top of this, several of my drug addicts were now in an extreme amount of pain, so I decided to give them anesthesia to lessen the pain. But it was a horrible idea mixing anesthesia with the other 50 drugs that they were on, and they exploded. Soon, the deaths of the colony started to affect our other pawns, because Bron decided it was a great time to do a prison break. In the midst of her getting shot by a million arrows, Phoebe decided it was a great idea to murder someone. Poppy said, fuck this, I'm out. Several of our colonists blew up due to drug-related issues, and on top of all this, Higgs decided to dig up some of the bodies of dead colony members and display them on the dining table. But at least we got enough supplies to make the nutrient dispenser. At this point, we've lost about a third of our colony to the war on drugs. But on the bright side, for those who are still with us, we managed to cure over half our colony using the addictol treatments. And it was starting to show, because although they were vomiting every few seconds and in so much pain they barely wanted to live, at least they were no longer drug addicts. So I pressed forward, continuing my mission to cure the remaining few addicts who have made it this far in my party. And so I sent forth Wanda, the product of a cured drug addict in my society, to go acquire more material to make addictol. Currently, being a drug addict wasn't looking as fun as it was when we first landed here. We were completely out of alcohol, smoke leaf, and ambrosia, so almost every colonist was going through withdrawals so bad that they were completely bedridden, or going on murder sprees trying to kill anyone in sight. When Wanda came back, there were only about 15 addicts left to cure. I had my doctors mass produce as much addictol as possible using the resources from our recent caravan trip. Sadly, for some of the patients, it was too late. As I began injecting the serum, half of them died due to the painful detoxification that can sometimes happen from addictol. We finally made it to the point where there was just one colonist who needed to be cured, Sandra. Believe it or not, Sandra was previously cured using the addictol treatment I'd given her earlier, but during the great deathening of half my colony, she got so stressed she decided to binge on psychic tea and gave herself an addiction again. The only issue is I've completely run out of materials to create the cure. If I were were to theoretically have my pawns beat the ever-living crap out of her, I could end this challenge with a 40% cure rate. However, there will be no drug addict left behind in this playthrough. So I created a comms console and an orbital beacon to see if I could trade with any of the locals in order to get Nutramine to make the last bit of addictol I needed to cure Sandra. However, when I connected to the comms, it seemed like I was giving my colony a giant beacon to be attacked at, because seconds after trying to contact the locals, I was raided by another colony of extremely advanced drug-craving raiders looking to raid the last bit of drugs I had in El Chapo's vault. With our primitive tools and half of our colony bedridden due to withdrawals or detoxification, I knew that we stood no chance against these raiders, so I had them do the only thing they knew how to do. So in the end, I think it's safe to say that we ended this challenge with a 100% success rate. All of our colonists are now cured of drug addiction because the whole time, the cure was never addictol. It was death. Only death can cure 50 drug addicts in Rimworld. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to drop a like if you want to see more Rimworld content like this in the future. I love you guys, and I'll see ya.